I remember walking into the living room thinking it would be another normal afternoon. I dropped my backpack on the floor and sat down, waiting for Mom to ask how school went, but she just stared at me with this tight, nervous look. Mark stood beside her with his arms crossed like he was waiting for something to explode. I laughed a little and said, "Okay, what's going on? Did someone die?" But neither of them cracked even a tiny smile, and a cold feeling moved up my spine. Mom cleared her throat and said, "We need to talk about something important." I slouched back on the couch and tried to play it off, saying, "You're freaking me out. Just say it." Mark stepped forward, pulled a folded check from his pocket, and placed it on the coffee table like he was handing me proof of a crime. I blinked at it and asked, "What is that for?" His voice was flat when he said, "We sold your room." I actually laughed out loud because it sounded so stupid. "Yeah, okay, funny. What's the ria?" Mom said softly, "He's serious." I stared at her, waiting for a sign that this whole thing was a messed up prank. "You sold my room?" I asked. Mark nodded like it was the most normal decision in the world. "We needed the money for Emily's wedding," he said. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Her wedding?" I repeated. Emily was standing behind them near the doorway, staring at the floor like she wished she could disappear. I looked at her and said, "You knew about this?" She didn't say a word. I leaned forward and pushed the check back toward Mark. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" My voice cracked even though I tried not to let it. Mom stepped closer and said, "It's temporary, honey. You're strong enough to handle this for a little while." I shook my head slowly. "You sold my room for a party," I whispered. Mark sighed like I was the unreasonable one. "It's not just a party. It's important for our family." I turned to Emily again and asked, "Is this what you wanted?" She finally looked up, but her eyes were watery. "I didn't want it," she said quietly. "But I didn't stop it either." I felt something sink inside me. "So all of you agreed I don't matter?" Mom reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't make this harder," she said. I stared at her hand and asked, "Harder for who?" No one answered. Mark walked around the table and said, "Look, you can sleep in the hallway or on the couch for now. You're almost an adult. Try to be mature about this." I felt heat rising in my face. "Mature?" I said. "You sold the one place in this house that was mine." Emily whispered, "I'm sorry," but the word landed like a leaf on fire. I pushed past them and walked down the hallway toward what used to be my room. The door was open. The bed was gone. The posters were gone. The shelves were gone. Even the carpet had been pulled up. Only bare wood floors and empty walls stared back at me like the room didn't even remember I existed. Mom followed me and said, "It's not as bad as it looks." I didn't turn around. "It looks like you erased me," I said. She tried again. "We're doing our best." I closed my eyes and said, "No. You're doing your best for her." Emily's voice came from behind us, "Please don't hate me." I said, "I don't hate you. I just finally understand where I stand." Mark called from the living room, "We don't have time for drama. Emily has cake testing at 5. I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah. Wouldn't want to ruin the cake." Mom whispered, "You'll adjust." I stepped into the empty room and stood in the center, feeling the cold wooden floor under my shoes. "No," I said, barely loud enough for them to hear. "I just woke up." I stood there, realizing everything had truly changed. I dragged a thin blanket across the hallway and set it near the wall, trying not to let anyone hear how shaky my breathing was. Emily's laughter came from the kitchen, mixed with Mom's excited voice as they talked about flower colors. I whispered, "This is unreal," but no one heard me. As I laid the blanket flat, I heard the front door open. Jason's voice drifted in. "I brought the champagne," he said. I kept my eyes down, hoping he wouldn't ask why I was on the floor. But he stepped closer and whispered, "Why are you down here, man?" My throat tightened. "I'm fine," I said, even though I clearly wasn't. Emily walked in behind him holding a stack of wedding brochures. "Don't start," she told him. Jason looked between us. "He's on the floor, Emily." She sighed and said, "It's temporary. Please don't make this dramatic." I felt my stomach twist. Jason crouched beside me and lowered his voice. "You don't deserve this." I shook my head, saying, "It's whatever. They made their choice." Before he could answer, Karen marched in wearing bright heels that clicked against the tiles. "Oh my God, is he seriously still here?" she said loudly. I stared at the ceiling because looking at her would have made things worse. "Do you ever shut up?" I asked. Jason tried not to smile. Karen scoffed. Wow, attitude from the hallway kid. Emily stepped between us and said, Karen, stop. Karen shrugged. I'm just saying what everyone is thinking. I sat up, rubbing my face. I'm a person, not some stray cat. Karen rolled her eyes and said, then maybe act like one. I snapped back, maybe mind your own business. Jason stood and said, enough. Emily pulled Karen toward the kitchen. Let's finish the cake list. They left me alone again. Jason stayed behind for a second. Listen, you don't have anywhere else to go? I shrugged. They sold my room. What do you think? He sighed. This isn't okay. I whispered, tell them that. He said softly, I already did. Then he walked away, leaving me with the quiet and the cold floor. Night hit fast. I laid on the blanket, trying to ignore the laughter echoing through the house. Emily, Mom, and Karen were picking songs for the wedding. Mark kept talking about budgets and decorations. I heard Mom say, it's only fair we help Emily. He'll understand. I closed my eyes tightly. I whispered, no, I won't. The hallway felt colder the longer I stayed there. I pulled the blanket closer, even though it didn't help much. Jason walked past later and paused. You awake? He asked quietly. I said, yeah. He knelt beside me and said, you don't deserve this treatment. I swallowed hard. Why are you even being nice to me? He looked down the hallway before answering. Because someone should be. I laughed bitterly. Not exactly a safe opinion around here. He said, I don't care. This is wrong. I whispered, thank you. He nodded and went upstairs. When the house finally went quiet, I turned on my side and stared at the wall. My back hurt from the floor, but the pain was nothing compared to everything spinning in my head. I'm nothing to them, I whispered. Saying it out loud made it real, and it felt like something inside me cracked. I tried to sleep, but every sound in the house kept pulling me back awake. Cabinets opening. Emily's voice drifting down the hallway. Mark laughing at something Karen said. It all felt like a world I wasn't part of anymore. I pressed my hand against the floor and whispered, I hate this feeling. I rolled onto my back and stared into the dark. I shouldn't be here, I whispered. My voice felt small. I thought about asking Mom again to let me sleep on the couch, but I already knew what she'd say. Don't make a scene. That sentence echoed in my head like a slap. I closed my eyes and whispered, I wish someone cared. I pulled the blanket close and tried to calm breathing, wondering how long they expected me to survive like this. I woke up stiff on the hallway floor, listening to muffled voices drifting from the kitchen. Karen's laugh shot through the house like a knife. She said, is he seriously still sleeping out here like extra luggage? I sat up and muttered, leave me alone. Karen smirked and said, I'm just telling the truth. I stood and said, the truth is you enjoy watching people get crushed. Mark stormed out of the kitchen and barked, what's your problem now? I pointed at the floor and said, this is abusive, and you know it. Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice as he said, watch your tone. I didn't back away. I said, I'm done pretending this is okay. Mom rushed over and whispered, please stop before this gets worse. I turned to her and asked, when did you stop seeing me as your son? She opened her mouth but nothing came out. Emily stepped forward and whispered, maybe we should calm down. I looked at her and said, you stayed quiet when they threw me on the floor. Emily's eyes dropped, and she whispered, I didn't know what to do. Karen rolled her eyes and said, he needs to stop acting like a victim. I snapped, you don't get to talk about my life. Mark jabbed a finger at me and said, you're the one starting fights. I said, I'm reacting to months of being ignored. Mom pleaded, can you please stop yelling? I looked right at her and said, I'm not your son anymore. Jason stepped out from behind them and whispered, guys, this isn't okay. Mark glared at him and said, stay out of this. Jason shook his head and replied, you're pushing him too far. I said, why does he get it but none of you do? Mom whispered, we're trying. I shook my head and said, you're trying to get rid of me. Emily reached toward me and said, no one wants that. I stepped back and said, then why does it feel true? Karen crossed her arms and muttered, maybe he wants attention. I turned to her and said, I want respect, not pity. Mark stepped forward again and growled, you need to watch yourself. I held my ground and said, I'm not scared of you anymore. Mom whispered, please stop before we say something we regret. I looked at all of them and said, I'm not your son. I'm a problem you want gone. No one argued. The silence was worse than shouting. Jason rubbed his forehead and said, "This is falling apart." Emily whispered, "I never wanted it like this." I replied, "Wanting isn't the same as doing." Karen sighed loudly and said, "Can we go back to planning?" I stared at her and said, "You only care about the show." She smirked and replied, "At least I'm honest." Mark snapped, "Everyone stop talking and calm down." I said, "You can't fix this with commands." Mom whispered, "Please, just breathe." I shook my head and said, "I need air." Jason stepped aside and said, "Go ahead." I walked past everyone without looking back. The house felt smaller with every step I took toward the front door. Mom called after me, "Please don't leave angry." I stopped but didn't turn around. I said, "I don't know how else to leave." Mark groaned and muttered, "Always dramatic." I answered, "I learned it from you." Jason whispered behind me, "Take your time." I pushed open the door and stepped outside into the cool air. The sky looked wider than the hallway where I had been sleeping. I took a deep breath and said, "When did you stop choosing me, Mom?" No answer came from behind the door. I walked down the steps, feeling something heavy lift from my chest even though it still hurt. I whispered, "I just need space," even though I knew space wouldn't fix what they broke. I wished someone inside would run after me, but the door stayed closed. I stood on the sidewalk and let the silence settle over me like a blanket I never had. I whispered, "I don't know who I am to them anymore," and kept walking. I went. I reached the doorway expecting silence, but the first thing I saw were trash bags piled against the wall. My chest tightened, and I whispered, "What happened to my clothes?" Linda turned from the living room, arms crossed, and said, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I stepped closer, staring at the bags, and murmured, "You tossed everything out because Emily needed space." Emily stood near the closet, holding dresses on hangers, and muttered, "It's not a big deal. I just needed room for the wedding stuff." I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat and said, "So my life gets bagged up because your outfits need breathing room." Mark appeared behind her and growled, "Stop with the attitude. You're getting worked up over nothing." Jason came downstairs, saw the bags, and asked, "Why are his things in the hallway?" Linda exhaled sharply and said, "We discussed reorganizing. His being dramatic." Jason pointed at the bags and said, "No, this is cruel. You don't treat someone like this." Mark stepped forward, glaring, and snapped, "Stay out of family decisions." I let out a humorless laugh and said, "So deciding where I fit is a family decision." Emily adjusted her grip on the dresses and whispered, "Please don't start another argument." I looked at her and said, "When did you ever defend me?" She winced but stayed silent. Jason moved between us and said, "He didn't do anything to deserve this." Linda stiffened and answered, "No one said that." I shook my head and said, "You didn't have to." Mark jabbed a finger toward Jason and shouted, "I said stay out of it." Jason shot back, "Or what? You'll throw more of his things out." The room crackled with tension, and I felt myself sinking into a numb calm. I crouched beside the bags and said, "I'll take these outside. I don't want another lecture." Linda sighed like I'd inconvenienced her and said, "Good. We all need some space." I tied the bags tighter, even though my hands trembled, and whispered, "Right. Space." Emily watched me quietly, and for a moment I thought she might speak, but she looked away. Jason reached for one of the bags and asked, "You want help?" I shook my head and said, "No. I can carry my own stuff." He frowned and whispered, "You shouldn't have to." I forced a thin smile and answered, "Doesn't matter. This is how things are." Mark leaned against the wall and muttered, "If he stopped overreacting, none of this would happen." I paused at the doorway and said, "Funny how you call it overreacting when it's happening to me." He scoffed, but I didn't reply. I stepped outside with the bags, the cold air brushing my face like a wake-up call. Jason followed me to the porch and asked, "Are you okay?" I set the bags down and said, "I'm fine. I just need air." He lowered his voice and said, "This isn't normal." I leaned against the railing and answered, "Normal or not, I won't cry in front of them again." Jason nodded slowly. I stared at the street and whispered, "I'm tired of fighting for a place in my own home." The wind tugged at the trash bags, and I nudged them closer. Jason said, "You deserve better." I gave him a grateful look and said, "I know. And that's why I need to walk alone for a bit." He stepped back and said, "I'll be inside if you need me." I watched him return to the house, then breathed deeply and whispered, "One day, they'll regret this." I picked up the bags again, feeling the weight of everything I carried, and stepped farther down the sidewalk. The numbness settled deeper, but for the first time, it steadied me. I whispered, "No more begging for space. No more waiting for them to choose me." The house behind me stayed silent, and I let that silence harden my resolve. I walked until the ache in my chest dulled, carrying the promise that this moment would be the last straw before everything changed. I kept walking, letting the night steady me more than their voices could. When Ryan opened the garage door and saw me standing there with 2 trash bags and a torn jacket, he froze. "Dude, what happened to you?" he asked, eyes locked on the bruise on my shoulder. "It's nothing," I muttered. "Just needed a place to crash." "That's not nothing." "Who did that?" I looked away. "It doesn't matter right now. Can I stay for a bit?" "You don't even have to ask," he said, stepping aside. "Get in here." The garage smelled like old paint and motor oil, but it felt safer than my own house. I dropped the bags near his toolbox, and he shut the door. "I swear, if Mark put his hands on you." "Ryan, please," I cut in. "Can we just talk about something else?" He sighed. "Fine. But you're staying as long as you need. No questions." I sat on the old couch he kept against the wall. The cushions were rough, but it was better than the hallway floor I'd been sleeping on. Ryan sat across from me on a milk crate. "You hungry?" "Honestly? Yeah." He stood. "I'll get Anna. She's got leftovers." A minute later, Anna walked in carrying a steaming plate. She paused when she saw me. "Oh my God, are you okay?" "I'm managing," I said quietly. She set the plate next to me. "Eat. You look like you haven't slept in days." "I haven't," I admitted. "Not really." Ryan folded his arms. "Start from the beginning. What happened this time?" I rubbed my hands together. "They threw my clothes into trash bags. Said the closet needed to be cleared for wedding stuff. Mark shoved me earlier when I told him he didn't get to decide everything." Ryan's jaw tightened. "He shoved you?" "Hard enough to leave that," I said, pointing at my shoulder. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "They really don't care anymore." Anna sat next to me. "You don't deserve that," she said softly. "No one does." The kindness in her voice cracked something in me. "I don't even know what I did wrong," I whispered. "You existed," Ryan said sharply. "That's all it takes with them." I shook my head. I kept thinking it'd get better. That maybe they'd realize how messed up this all is. Ryan leaned forward. "They won't. People like that don't just wake up one day and grow a conscience." I stared at the concrete floor. "I feel stupid for staying this long." "You're not stupid," Anna said. "You were trying to keep your family together. That doesn't make you weak." I felt weak, I murmured. Ryan nudged my knee. "Well, you're here now. That's something." Anna handed me a blanket. "It gets cold in the garage. Use this tonight." "Thank you," I said, overwhelmed. She smiled. "You're safe here." After she left, Ryan sat back on the crate. "So what's the plan? You gonna stay here forever?" "I don't want to mooch off you guys," I said. "You're not mooching. I still need to figure something out. I was thinking, maybe I should look for a job." Ryan nodded. "I can help you. My uncle owns that small hardware shop near the bus station. He might need someone." "That'd be actually amazing." "Then we'll ask him tomorrow." I looked around the cluttered garage. It's weird. I should feel miserable right now. But I don't. Ryan smirked. "Because nobody here is throwing you out, yelling at you, or treating you like a burden." "Exactly," I said. "For the first time in days, I actually feel like I can breathe." He tossed me a pillow. "You can talk to me about anything, you know. Even the stuff you don't want to say out loud." I hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "If you were me, would you go back?" "Not a chance," he said immediately. "And if you try to, I'll lock the garage door." I laughed for the first time in days. "Thanks, man." "No problem. I've got your back." Night fell quickly, and the sound of crickets filled the silence outside. As I lay down on the couch, Anna peeked in again. "You doing okay?" she whispered. "For now," I said. "Well, if you need anything else, just knock. Or yell. Or throw something at Ryan." He groaned. "Why me?" She smirked. "Because you deserve it." I smiled. "Good night, Anna." Good night, she replied and closed the door. Ryan flicked off the light. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's a new day. I pulled the blanket close. I hope so. You'll make it, he said. I'm sure of it. For the first time in a long time, I believed someone. As I closed my eyes, fear and freedom tangled inside me. I had nothing, no room, no home, no family, but lying there in the dim garage, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. A beginning. I was halfway through sweeping out Ryan's garage when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, but the name on the screen froze me. Linda. I answered anyway. What do you want? I said. She jumped right in. You need to come to Emily's wedding. Family photos won't look right without you. I laughed because it sounded unreal. You kicked me out, I said. You sold my room. Now you want me for pictures? She sighed like I was the problem. Stop being dramatic. It's one day. Don't make this harder. I paced around the garage. Harder for who? You? She didn't answer, then said, just show up. Wear something decent. I hung up before she finished. A minute later, Emily texted. Please come. I didn't want things to go this far. I stared at her message. I typed, why didn't you stop them? She read it. She didn't reply. I set the phone down, feeling that same sting I kept pretending didn't hurt. Ryan walked in with 2 sodas. You look like someone punched your soul, he said. I held up my phone. They want me at the wedding so the pictures look normal. Ryan frowned. Normal? They threw you out. That's not normal. I nodded. They still think I owe them something. Ryan sat on the old cooler. What are you gonna do? I shrugged. I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore them forever. Before I could say more, I got another text. Jason. If you don't come, I'll understand. I read it twice. It felt different from the others. I whispered, at least he gets it. Ryan leaned forward. He's the only one with sense. I sighed. He's marrying into this mess. Poor guy. Ryan laughed. He'll figure them out soon. I stared at the garage ceiling. Why do they only want me when it benefits them? Ryan said, because you let them. Until now. His words hit harder than I expected. I'm tired, I said. Tired of feeling like a prop. Ryan nodded slowly. Then stop letting them use you. Later that night, Anna stepped into the garage with a warm plate. You haven't eaten, she said. I took it and whispered, thanks. She noticed my expression. Bad call? I nodded. They want me at the wedding for photos. She shook her head. That's cold. I sighed. They don't want me there as family. Just decoration. Anna sat down beside me. You deserve better than people who only remember you when they need you. I swallowed hard. I know. It just hurts. She pointed at my phone. So what will you tell them? I looked at the screen again. Linda's call. Emily's message. Jason's quiet understanding. I said I'd think about it, I told her. Anna raised an eyebrow. And will you? I whispered, deep down, I already know the answer. Ryan came back in with blankets. Whatever you choose, we got you, he said. I nodded. That means more than you think. He dropped a blanket over my shoulders. Good. Because you're not alone. I looked at the phone one more time. Linda's words echoed in my head, family photos won't look right without you. Emily's message sat under it like a quiet excuse. Please come. And Jason's final line felt like a breath of air in a house full of smoke. If you don't come, I'll understand. Ryan tapped my arm. You don't owe them a single smile. Anna added, not after what they did. I exhaled slowly. Then maybe it's time they see that. I didn't reply to Linda. I didn't reply to Emily. But I typed a short message to Jason. Thanks for understanding. He replied almost instantly. Whatever you choose, take care of yourself. For the first time all week, I felt seen. I lay back on the garage floor, staring at the dim light above me. Maybe I wasn't home. Maybe I didn't have much. But for once, I felt like the choices were mine. And I wasn't going to let them turn me into their puppet again. I closed my eyes and let the quiet settle around me, choosing myself for the first time ever tonight. Finally. I walked into the church, heart hammering like it would break through my ribs. The flowers smelled too sweet, the music too happy. Every step made my stomach twist. I saw Mark laughing with some of the guests, and my chest tightened. I clenched my fists. "Hey, everyone," Mark said loud enough for me to hear. "You all know, my stepson, he moved out because he wanted independence. Isn't that great?" I froze. My suffering, my nights on the cold floor, my broken body, turned into a joke for all of them. I could hear whispers. Some guests chuckled, some looked embarrassed. I stormed past them. "Mom, we need to talk," I hissed, dragging Linda into a small hallway away from the crowd. Linda's eyes widened, guilt flashing for a split second. "Honey? I didn't mean." "Didn't mean?" I spat. "Didn't mean what? That you sold my room? That I slept on the floor while you celebrated? That you acted like it was nothing?" Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice trembled. I wanted Emily to have a happy day." "A happy day?" I interrupted, my voice cracking. "Do you know what it felt like, Mom? Every night, the cold floor digging into my back. Every morning, waking up to know I wasn't even allowed to exist in my own home. Do you know how that feels?" She pressed a hand to her mouth, shaking. I didn't. "I don't want your excuses, Mom. I wanted my family." My words hit the wall, echoing. Jason appeared quietly beside me. He didn't say anything at first, just watched Linda crumble. Then he whispered, "This isn't right." "I know," I muttered. We heard murmurs from the main hall. Emily's voice cracked. I don't deserve this wedding." I swallowed hard and stepped out, confronting the crowd. "Do you all hear that? Do you know why she's crying? Because you all pretend everything is fine while I was treated like a ghost in my own home." Mark's face turned red. "Ungrateful. You're ungrateful, and you ruined this day." I laughed bitterly. "Ungrateful? I'm the one who didn't have a bed to sleep in while you threw a party to celebrate her life. I'm the one who wasn't even considered human in my own house." Gasps filled the room. Guests shuffled, unsure where to look. Jason stepped forward, voice firm. "That's enough, Mark. Everyone here deserves to know the truth. You made him leave. You treated him like he didn't matter. And you laughed about it." Mark opened his mouth to protest, but Jason's gaze didn't waver. "Do you see what you did? Do you hear her, Emily? You deserve better. He deserves respect. And you all can't just pretend this is okay." Emily collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "I didn't know. I didn't want it to be like this." Her voice echoed in the hall. Some guests whispered, others turned pale. Mark looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I took a shaky breath. "I came here to be seen, Mom. Not to be a prop in your story. Not to be laughed at while I bled inside. Do you understand?" Linda nodded slowly, tears rolling down her cheeks. I do. I see it now." But it felt empty. Seeing her cry didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the nights on the floor. The humiliation. The betrayal. Guests murmured, and the ceremony came to a halt. The music stopped. The priest looked confused. Emily ran out, her veil trailing behind her, sobs filling the air. Jason ran after her, wrapping his arms around her. I stayed still, heart pounding, watching everything collapse. The wedding, the grand celebration, was gone in an instant. Mark's face was pale, speechless. Linda sank to a chair, stunned. I took a deep breath and walked away from them, leaving their ruined day behind. I didn't yell anymore. I didn't plead. I just walked. The hallway felt empty, but I finally felt a fraction of relief. For the first time, I realized something. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to be part of their staged happiness. I had my own life, my own choices. And as the echoes of cries and whispers faded, I understood. Sometimes, leaving is the only way to reclaim yourself. I stepped into the venue just as Jason shouted, "I can't do this." His voice echoed through the hall. I froze, watching him rip off his boutane and throw it on the floor. Emily gasped. "What do you mean you can't do this?" "I'm calling off the wedding," he said. "I'm not marrying someone who lies." My chest tightened. I whispered, "Is this really happening?" Jason's father slammed his hand on a table. "If you walk out now, we're done supporting anything. No funds, no help, nothing." Jason fired back, "I don't care." Emily's makeup streaked as she cried. "Why now? Why in front of everyone?" "Because I found out everything," Jason said. "The messages, the plans, the deceit. I'm not pretending anymore." I stepped closer, unsure if I should speak. Emily looked at me like I caused the explosion. She choked. You told him?
No, I said quietly.
He figured it out himself. Mark stormed toward Jason. Fix this. Now. You're embarrassing us. Jason didn't flinch. I'm done letting you push me. Guests whispered, eyes darting between all of us. I felt their stares climbing over my skin. Mark spun toward me. You think this is funny? You love ruining families, don't you?
I exhaled slowly. I didn't ruin anything.
You all did that yourselves. My words only fueled him. He shouted, this was supposed to be perfect. Emily sobbed harder. Why are you yelling? This isn't helping. Mark pointed at her. If you had kept your mouth shut, none of this would have blown up today. She backed away. Don't talk to me like that. Linda rushed in, her voice sharp as glass. Stop shouting. We still have time to fix this. Jason, get back on stage. He shook his head. I won't. She glared at me. You planned this, didn't you? You ruined my daughter's day because you couldn't stand seeing her happy. I laughed bitterly. You never cared whether I was happy. Why pretend now? Linda's lip curled. You turned everyone against us. Before I could answer, a voice from behind me cut in, Karen. No, Linda. You all did that yourselves. My stomach dropped. Karen, what did you do? She held up her phone. I posted everything. The screenshots. The recordings. The whole story. Emily shrieked. You what? You deserved it, Karen snapped. And people are already sharing it. Linda grabbed the phone from Karen's hand, scrolling rapidly. Take it down. Take it down right now. Karen shrugged. Too late. The guests' murmurs grew louder. Someone said, so that's what happened. Another whispered, no wonder he cancelled. I felt a strange numbness rising through me. Everyone knows now. Karen nodded. Thousands. I swallowed. I didn't ask you to do that. I know, she said. But I couldn't let them keep acting like victims. Emily staggered toward me. Please, listen. She wiped her face with trembling fingers. I'm sorry. I didn't protect you. I didn't choose you. I should have stood up for you. I should have done everything differently. For a moment, I saw the girl I once trusted, lost, scared, desperate. My heart squeezed painfully. I never wanted this, she whispered. I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid. I was selfish. I thought I could keep everyone happy. I was wrong. She reached for my hand. Please, say something. I pulled my hand away. Emily, you made your choice. She collapsed into sobs. I know. And I regret it. Jason sat down on the edge of the stage, head in his hands. This whole thing is a mess. Mark shouted again, enough crying. Someone fix this. Linda stomped toward me. Tell Jason to marry her. Fix what you broke. I stepped back. I'm not saving you from the consequences of what you all did. Mark snarled, you walk out now, and you'll regret it. I felt something shift inside me, anger loosening its grip, pain settling into something sharper and calmer. I already regretted staying. He moved like he might grab me, but Jason stepped in front of me. Don't touch him. Mark barked, you're choosing him over your own family? Jason answered, I'm choosing what's right. Linda cried out, this wasn't supposed to happen. Emily whispered behind me, please don't go. For the first time in a long time, I stood still and realized the weight pressing on me wasn't mine to carry anymore. I'm done, I said. I turned, walked past the guests, past the ruined decorations, past the noise and the pleading voices. Each step hurt, but each step freed me. By the time I reached the door, the pain was deep, but the release was real. I pushed the door open, whispered to myself, finally, and walked out into the air that felt like mine again. I dropped my bag by the couch and let out a long sigh. The apartment smelled faintly of cleaning spray and fried eggs, but it felt like mine. I can't believe it, I muttered. I actually have a place to call my own. Ryan grinned, plopping next to me. It's yours, man. You earned it. No one's gonna kick you out or sell your stuff. I never thought. I mean, after everything, my voice faltered. I didn't think I'd get here. You got here because you didn't give up, he said simply. You fought when no one else did. I smiled faintly, but my chest still ached a little when I thought about my old home. I remembered the cold floor, the laughter, the betrayal. I don't want to think about them anymore.
Mom, Mark, Emily.
They're not part of my life now. Anna brought over a plate of scrambled eggs and toast.
Eat something warm, she said gently.
You can't save the world on an empty stomach. I looked at her, a little shocked.
You're too kind, Anna.
I don't deserve this.
You deserve better, she said softly.
All of you did, but at least someone finally listens now. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten. For the first time in weeks, I let a few tears slip.
I can't believe how long I let them control me.
I gave them everything, and they just threw me away. Ryan nodded.
And now look at you.
You're building your life. Step by step. Floor by floor. Apartment by apartment.
I laughed, weakly.
Apartment by apartment? Sounds like a building metaphor.
Maybe, he said, smirking. But it fits.
You're laying the foundation. Soon, the whole structure will be yours. I set my fork down and pulled out my phone. For messages from Linda. She wrote paragraphs, apologizing, explaining herself. I didn't know things would go so far. I thought I was doing the right thing. I stared at them and typed nothing. Mark sent one after that.
I'm sorry.
I never meant to hurt you. Can we talk? I deleted both messages before I could even read them fully. My thumb hovered over Emily's last message. You deserved better than us.
I didn't reply. I didn't want to.
Ryan leaned back. You're not ignoring them for nothing, man. You're protecting yourself. I nodded.
Yeah.
I've spent too long letting them define me, letting them decide my worth.
No more. I'm doing this for me now.
For the first time ever. Anna smiled quietly from the kitchen doorway.
I'm glad you stayed.
Even when things got hard, you didn't give up. That's what matters. I felt something warm in my chest, something that had been missing for months. Hope, maybe. Maybe even pride.
I think
I'm going to be okay. You're more than okay, Ryan said. You're unstoppable. They'll never touch you again.
I laughed softly.
Unstoppable? That sounds scary. Scary, sure, Ryan said, but also true. You've turned your pain into fuel. Every time they hurt you, you used it to get stronger. And now, look at you. I glanced around the small apartment, the walls freshly painted, the couch a little worn but comfortable. My bag in the corner, my few belongings neatly stacked, my life finally in my control. I can't believe it, I whispered. I finally get to live my life, on my own terms. Anna came over, placing a hand on my shoulder. You're going to do amazing things. I can feel it. I looked at her and Ryan, and for the first time, I felt something unshakable. I wasn't broken. I wasn't discarded. I was rising. Thanks, I said, voice thick but steady. For everything. For believing in me when no one else did. Ryan smirked. We always knew you'd make it. Just took a little, dramatic show along the way.
I laughed.
It was light, free, unburdened. And I knew, deep down, that no one, Mark, Linda, Emily, could ever hurt me like that again. I had my life. My choice. My strength. For the first time, I felt a future that was truly mine. I stood in front of the door, keys trembling slightly in my hand. Here goes nothing, I whispered to myself, twisting the lock. The click echoed in the empty hallway, but it sounded like music. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The apartment smelled faintly of fresh paint and sunlight. It was small, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I dropped my bag by the corner, my shoulders sagging in relief. I made it, I said aloud, letting the words settle around me. Ryan's voice popped into my head, teasing as always, "Welcome to your first kingdom, your highness." I chuckled softly, shaking my head. I walked to the window, peering out at the city below. The quiet was almost overwhelming after months of chaos and judgment, but it felt peaceful. My chest rose and fell slowly, like I was finally breathing correctly for the first time in years. I sank to the floor for a moment, thinking about the cold hallway floors, the nights I spent staring at peeling walls in my old home. I can't believe I survived that, I murmured. The memory made my chest tighten, but not with pain this time, just with understanding. I was stronger than I'd ever realized. Anna's words echoed, "You deserve better." I nodded to myself. I did. I had finally built a life that no one could take away. No one could use me as a prop or a punchline again. I pulled my bag closer and took out a small blanket. I wrapped it around my shoulders and sat back against the wall, closing my eyes. I own this space, I whispered. I control my life. The silence was comforting, and I let it wash over me. No one was calling me dramatic. No one was judging my choices. For once, the world felt simple, even quiet. I laughed softly, thinking about Mark's rage, Linda's tears, Emily's apologies that came too late. I didn't need to answer them. I didn't need to prove anything. My life wasn't about them anymore. I pulled out my phone, just to check messages one last time. None from them. Emily's last text still sat there, "You deserved better than us."
I didn't reply. I didn't want to. I didn't need to.
It was enough that I knew it was true. Ryan's voice rang in my memory, "You're unstoppable. They'll never touch you again." I smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through my chest. Yes. I was unstoppable now. They could scream, cry, or lie about me all they wanted. It didn't matter. I had my own strength, my own life, and my own peace. I stood and walked slowly around the apartment, imagining where my bed would go, the small desk I'd put in the corner, maybe a plant on the windowsill. The space felt alive with possibility. For the first time, I was excited about my future. I paused by the door again, keys in hand. I whispered softly, "This is mine. My room, my life, my future." The words settled inside me like a warm blanket. I didn't feel heavy anymore. I didn't feel trapped. I didn't feel invisible. I knelt briefly by the empty couch, running my hand along the fabric. "I didn't get revenge by hurting them," I said quietly. "I got revenge by outgrowing them." The apartment felt full now, even though it was empty. The walls echoed my own voice, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt like freedom. It felt like home. I sat by the window one last time, staring out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the distance. The night was quiet, the streets alive, but it didn't touch me. I had my own rhythm now. My own peace. My own control. I stood, taking one final deep breath, and walked to the door. I turned the lock, clicked it shut behind me, and leaned against it for a moment. The sound was final, comforting, and absolute. "This is mine," I whispered again. "Everything else is over." I walked to the center of the room, letting my arms drop to my sides, feeling lighter than I had in years. No resentment. No fear. No one could hurt me again. I smiled, soft and real. "I made it," I said, one last time, letting it echo in the small space. I closed my eyes, feeling the calm settle in. For the first time, I felt complete.